We are live now. I'll wait for a couple minutes before we start. At least give 30 seconds. But good namaste, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone wherever you guys are. Welcome to the second live session for Breathing History on AnantaSarga. As I mentioned before, we've added this section so that we can go into some details and understand some of the topics in more details, which is not possible when we do a video. So in this one, we will do a lot more discussions, and it is going to be a conversation based, and someone can ask questions live as well. So today's episode is a little bit different from our genre, but it is not about the history per se, but it is not just about the it is not just about the history. It is about the history of our movie making industry, and we are going to talk about how what all things that go into movie making, right? So it is about the experience and the challenges, and obviously the rewards that people are in there for of movie making. So this we are mostly the conversation would be mostly based upon the new movie makers, the upcoming people who are aspiring to be movie makers. तो जो भी लोग सोच रहे हैं नई movies बनाने का या इस field में आने का, this would be the best opportunity for you. There will be a lot of experiences that people have we have our guests. We will discuss a lot of things that they went through in their experience. So अगर किसी दूसरे की गलती से हमें सीखने मिलता है तो why not. And actually अगर उनके कुछ चीजें that have worked for them, so why not use them, and hopefully they work for you as well. So let me go ahead and introduce our first guest with you. His name is Raghav Murali. He is he's one of my very good friends. He has been in the movie business for a while. He even went to school for a film school, undergrad and graduate in US. He grew up in not in India but different parts of Asia. He's a director. He's a music composer. He's an entrepreneur. He has done some ad films. He has done some animation series. He's also made movies. I think his first movie was in 2015. A very very good human being, and one of my very good friends. Welcome to the. Let me add him to the stream. He should be up. Namaste, Raghav. How are you doing?
Hi, Varun. Good to be here. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Welcome. Good. We have one more guest with us today. He is one of the award-winning directors and my good friend and business partner, Preetam Tiwari. He is a director, editor, voice artist, a script writer. He's an engineer by qualification, and he is a partner with me for AnantaSarga production. So let me add him as well. Namaste, Preetam. How are you?
I'm doing great, Varun. Namaste and hi, Raghav. Good to see you.
Hey, Preetam. Good to see you, man.
So let me kick this off of this meeting with our special guest, Raghav. I'll give the mic to you. And my first question would be that I've given a very, very high level introduction about you to the viewers. What I want you to tell them is a little bit more detail about you and the first project that you did, like the first feature film that you did back in 2015, and all the challenges that you faced during that. And then we'll come back to more deeper questions.
So that's a lot of things to cover, but I'll start at the beginning. I was, for the longest time of my life, an NRI. I was born in Delhi because that's where my parents are from originally. But I grew up in Bahrain and then Malaysia. That's where my parents still are currently, in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. So I was fortunate to grow up in all these interesting places. Then I first discovered filmmaking in boarding school. I went to the United World College, Mahindra United World College of India, which is outside of Pune, in a little hill and a forest outside a village called Paud. It's a really interesting
Oh,
place. There were
nice.
just like 200 students, very small and intimate scenes, very really life-changing experience. So over there, this was an IB school, International Baccalaureate, and when I was there, I got to study film under uh, a friend who's now a friend of mine called Kurush, and it was IB film. It was just film studies. So it was my first introduction to filmmaking, even as a subject. I didn't until then. The idea that film could even be studied, or the fact that it was an industry, never really occurred to me. Right? I was about 16 at the time. So it was during that time that I really fell in love with it, and I decided that's what I wanted to do. But when I applied to colleges, and I even got into a couple of film schools, my teacher at the time was like, "Why don't you go and get yourself a degree in something useful first?" So I ended up going to Lake Forest College in Chicago, and I studied economics and communication. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
just a second. I think, Preetham, there might be like a little noise coming from your end. Thank you.
Nice.
Sorry about
Understood.
that. um, so at Lake Forest, while economics was one of my majors, communication was my other major, because through that major, I got to study some more filmmaking. I got to do some international cinema courses, some documentary filmmaking. I made my first short films and stuff over there. Learned a lot, had a great time. But it was also during those 4 years that I really decided I do want to pursue filmmaking. And so I didn't want to waste any more time. So I chose to apply to film school.
Mm-hmm.
I applied to a few. I was fortunate at the time to get into all my colleges that I applied to. And I eventually ended up going to Chapman University in Los Angeles. I did an MBA and an MFA in film and TV producing. It's basically a dual master's in which you get to both learn very hands-on how to be a producer and to create films, but also the business of the industry. So quite an excellent course, and I was fortunate to have been accepted into such a small cohort. There was a total of 14 students in the whole batch. So
Oh,
a
nice.
small exclusive cohort, and I had a great time. It was a 3-year course during my time there, and I got to learn a lot. I got to learn from industry leaders and experts, and because LA is where Hollywood is, I got to meet a lot of interesting people, ranging from famous producers, actors, directors, uh, and we got to speak with them, have dinner with them, all kinds of things. Really eye-opening experience. And I was fortunate to also learn from some industry stalwarts such as Harry Upland, Barry Blaustein, Barbara Doyle. These are all some interesting names. If you were to Google them, you'll see
Yeah.
they've done everything from produce movies with Martin Scorsese to Clint Eastwood, or write really famous things like Police Academy. So
Mm-hmm.
really quite a great experience. So
Mm-hmm.
while I was there, I I got the opportunity to direct my first feature film. The funny thing is, I was not a directing student, right? I was a producing student. But one sec, Preetham, I think the YouTube stream is playing from your end, so I'm hearing myself like 5 seconds later over there. Uh, or maybe it's just my voice here. Anyway, while I was there, I got the opportunity to direct my first feature, and it was actually through an old friend, a friend of mine called Rashan Noor. We went to college together in Lake Forest,
Mm-hmm.
and he is from Chicago, but he's of Bangla American descent. And we both became very good friends at Lake Forest because of our love for cinema and basketball, actually. We used to play basketball together. That's how we met.
Okay.
So somehow a few years later, here I was at Chapman doing my master's, and I suddenly get a call from Rashan one day, and he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I was like, "It's good. It's a long time, no, I haven't seen you. How are you doing?" So we ended up getting dinner, and we spoke. And he was like, and somehow I realized in this time, it had been about 4 to 6 years since I'd seen him. And in this time, he had gone ahead and already directed a couple of movies and acted in it, and released them theatrically. So he had gone from being, uh, in the finance world to going and just taking the risk and making movies and somehow releasing them and learning it all himself. It would have been pretty cool. Sorry, what did you say?
And all of that was in US.
Yes, so he was based in
Okay.
Chicago at the
Okay.
time, and he directed his first movie there, although it did release across Bangladesh and Chicago, his first couple of films. I say Chicago, but
Okay.
I meant the US. Chicago,
Yeah. Yeah.
LA,
Yeah.
New
Yeah.
York, all these major
Yeah.
metros, he got like wide theatrical release.
Nice.
So basically, he had a he had an idea for a movie. He had received inkling of some funding for it, and he knew I was learning cinema, and he always knew that I was interested in it, and we'd been in touch on and off a little bit. So he said, "Hey man, I've written this. I would love if you could take a look at it." And so he sent me a first draft of like a short note that was about 5 pages or something. And I looked at it, and I had some notes for him. I had my opinions about it. And so about a week later, he was like, "Hey man, I really like your ideas. Would you be interested in writing this with me?" So I said, "Okay, sounds cool." So we sat, and over the span of about 2 to 3 months, we just dished out a screenplay really quickly. That was the first feature-length screenplay that I'd worked on. At this point, I had learned how to write screenplays, but the longest screenplay I had written was maybe about 13 pages or 15
Mm-hmm.
pages, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But a feature-length screenplay is like 90 to 115, maybe 120 pages, right?
Oh yeah.
It's a whole other ball game.
Yeah.
So this was the first feature-length screenplay that I became a part of. It was
Mm-hmm.
co-written between Rashan and myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we finished writing it, he suddenly was like, "Hey man, I still need help making this movie. Would you like to help me produce it?" So I said, "Yeah, sure." So we started putting together all the logistical, things together, and slowly but surely, the film started coming together. And then maybe about 2 to 3 months before the supposed shoot dates, he said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to act in this film. Would you like to direct it?" And I said, "Sure." And that's how I got my first directing gig uh, as a for a feature film. Before this, I had really only directed a few short films, which were all student films, so much smaller budget, if even at all, mostly done like guerrilla style. But it was cool. It was very interesting. And then, of course, I got straight into it. Since this was my first ever feature film, there was a lot I was learning on the go. I was still a student in film school. Um, this was not a film school project, but because I was part of film school, I had resources such as my teachers and my peers to really get some help from advice, strategies on how to tackle, uh, how to direct more experienced actors, how to strategize and schedule the whole film, how to make the most of the day that you have, how to deal with the challenges that you will face on set. So this way, I was quite fortunate to still be in film school when I got the opportunity to direct because I had all these resources.
So can I ask you a question? I think that's a good
Go for
point
it.
here. You said because you went to school, so you learned a lot of things to how to tackle all those things that come your way when you actually start making a movie. So do you think that someone who did not go to school for all of this, like how did that set you apart from someone who went to school for this? And so
Right.
maybe if you can talk about few things specifically that the problems that, oh, you were like, oh, thank God I went to school for this, otherwise I don't know how would, because it may have to do with the resources, the context, the networking, or just
Yes.
the strategy on how to handle certain things.
Absolutely. Now, it's not to say that someone has to go to film school to become a filmmaker, because that's clearly not the case. There are so many successful filmmakers. Rashan himself didn't go to film school, and he has learned most of these things on the fly. There are a lot of free resources online. But I think the biggest advantages I felt I had was, one were the people who were there and willing to support me for any questions that I had. If I had doubts, if there were things I didn't understand, I could always go to these people and they would help me. So I had these resources. Second was I had knowledge about the subject to a deeper and quite high level of understanding because of going to film school, such as screenplay writing and formatting. These are things, if you're not in film school, it takes a lot of resources and guidance to really get you there. Now, because I was in film school, I didn't have to do so much experimentation with my formatting, for example. I was just told, this is how you do it, right? So it saved me a lot of time and effort in the learning process. And I think as a guidance, it was particularly useful being a student. Now, other than that, one major aspect is for sure being prepared with the kinds of challenges we might face. For example, because I was a producing student, one of the first, we're told basically two things when we begin. One is producing is really just problem solving more than anything else. And the second is safety is one of the most important things on set. Now, I know in India, safety in general is not given the importance or credence that it deserves. I think it's visible everywhere in our culture, from whether it be film, even film sets are a little better, but if you see constructions or anything on the road, you can see that. You see even people, metal workers, woodworkers, there's never any safety protection. Like these basic, what in the West may be considered basic human things are not given credence here. But in terms of the challenges that we face, basic things like the amount of time you have in a day, how to deal with an actor if they are, let's say, not feeling it that day. You know how artists are. We ourselves, to some extent, are artists, but especially actors, the people on set who are part of that technical. The movie is made, and the reason the people are the most famous are the actors, right? And that's because they are the ones who are emoting, who are performing. Everything else is almost in addition to that performance. So it's really important to understand that really filmmaking to a large extent is people management, whether you're a director or a producer. And that is one of these important aspects I think I really picked up from being a student.
And
and of
on
course,
that, Raghav,
sorry.
on that, I just want to ask you, how did you convince a name like Monica Dogara to accept your project? Like, how did you approach her, and how is that?
Okay, so I was not the one to do the approaching. It was Rashan actually, but and now in retrospect, I can say there is no limit to the power of cold calling. But in this particular case, there are traditional avenues in which to reach any artist. They always have a manager or an agency that represents them. So there are simple paths in which to reach them, formal paths. And most of these artists, they will have representatives who will take it seriously. If they're able to see that the project is real and the people who are working on it are serious about it, they will make an effort to at least take it in front of the artist. And in Monica's case, she ended up being really cool. We are good friends now, of course, because we've worked together on a whole film. We haven't seen each other in a while, but I do remember, of course, as with any artist, there was a negotiation in terms of dates, the budget, and all those aspects. And the great thing about someone like Monica is that she's also a very collaborative actor. So on set, there was always a lot of good constructive debate as to how a scene could go. Like we would have rehearsed it a certain way, and then on the day when the performance comes, we would go that way and then see, why don't we also try it in this way or that way? I mean, maybe I'm being a little vague here, but this also happened about 6 or 7 years ago, right? So
Yeah.
it's been a while.
So between because you shot for that one film and um, you shot in both locations. You shot in India and so basically Bollywood and Hollywood. Which one you in the same movie you had experiences for both? How would you compare them?
So this film was actually shot entirely in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, we shot the whole thing in New York City over a span of about 2.5 months. I think it was 26 shoot days or something like that overall.
Okay, so
And
now
we
you're
did it
shooting
in
in
3
Bollywood.
schedules.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been in India since 2016. So
Yeah.
most of my shooting since then has been here in India. And
Mhm.
especially in the last couple of years, we haven't really been on set that much. Most of the more recent sets have been corporate shoots or like
I see.
small intimate concerts, stuff like that.
Okay.
But this film was shot entirely in the city of New York. You'll see it also when you watch the film, it's been
Yep.
credited. And New York is a very film-friendly city, especially for smaller crews. And our budget was extremely limited. Like, imagine I was a first-time director. We were lucky to get funding from a single producer who just believed in the story and the overall vision for it. So we were lucky to have that kind of very positive support. And New York, being a very film-friendly city, is also a commute-friendly city. So it was, even though it was a lot of work, we were a really small crew and we had very limited equipment. So we had to make do with a lot of jugaad per se, but American style jugaad versus Indian style jugaad. We
No,
were,
that makes sense.
if you saw us, we'd be walking down the subway, the New York subway, with like our equipment, and there'd be just 3 of us carrying some like 10 bags,
I
and
can
we'd just
totally
be,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was
And
tough, but
Because
a
in
lot of fun.
I've seen in the subways
and you
people
said
go
about
along with a lot of
the
things.
challenges regarding the safety. You
Uh,
said that safety in US is much better than safety in India.
it's more of
So
a
is it
mindset,
just the
yeah.
safety, or what I would like to understand is the overall process. Challenges will be there, whether it's US or India, but is it more easy to overcome the challenges in US, or is it more easy to
So
overcome the challenges here?
I don't know if it's easier or not, but what I can say, it's the process of filmmaking in the US is a little more formalized. Uh, it's not that the process in India isn't. If especially Bollywood is a very formal filmmaking culture, as is even in Chennai, the Tamil industry and Telugu industry. These three are the largest of the film industries here, and they are all very formalized. But the processes in place, I think, in at least in Hollywood, are older and more strict per se. Like everything is run by the agencies. You have to. There are the roles that unions play are very large there. So if you have a budget above certain amount, you have to pay people above a certain amount. If you have a budget, and if you have a certain budget, then your actors have to be from a particular union. These kinds of rules exist, and they are much more enforced than they are here. Here also you have unions, but they don't have the same kind of power that the unions over there do. And beyond that, when you're talking about safety and stuff, it's a mindset and it's a process, and it's also legalities, things like insurance that here Bollywood films have them, but your general films, let's say corporate filmmakers, it's not something we have. It's not a norm. In fact, instead of insurance, what we have here are people. So if I rent equipment, if I'm in the US, I rent equipment, I also pay an extra amount for insurance. Then I
Mhm.
myself can take that equipment and use it however I want and bring it back. And if there's any damages, the insurance that I've paid for covers it. Here, the concept of insurance doesn't yet, at least doesn't exist at our level. It exists on the large studio level. But at
Mhm.
our level, now if I want to rent equipment here in Bangalore or in Chennai, I rent the equipment, and with the equipment, I get handlers of that equipment, people who come with it.
Yeah.
So they
Mhm.
have to be the ones to handle it. We aren't allowed to. So we just have to tell them what to do with it. Of course, we'll have
Right.
to, let's say if I am the one who's the DOP or the cameraman, I have to use the camera, but I won't be the one setting it up. It'll be
Mhm.
the guys who come with it. And
Right.
that here is the insurance. They don't explicitly call it that, but that's why they're there. So that if anything happens to the equipment, it's not our fault. It's the liability lies on the company itself because it's their own people who are doing it.
I mean, it's just like it's just different. It's not good or bad because, like
Yeah,
gas stations, you have to fill your own gas. Instead, India, you have people doing it. It's easier and cheaper there to do it. So I would rather have someone carry all my stuff, right? Instead of me carrying it myself, all the lights and all the equipment.
right.
So
But okay, if you're looking at a larger set, you
yeah.
have people there also on those sets doing all these all this work. They have grips, but those are all people who are paid a certain amount of money and a salary based on the budget of that film. Here, you will have those grips, but you'll also just have guys who come with all the equipment who are also doing it. So while we may save some money on that because we're not paying extra for the insurance, you're also feeding those many more people. Your sets have so many more people on them, and you also waste a lot more time dealing with communication. And of course, in India, you have chai culture, so you have way more breaks in between than you do on an American set. On an American set, you have 6 hours of shoot. Actually, you begin with a walk-in breakfast, which people are working while they eat. That's why it's called a walking breakfast. Not walk in, but walking. You have 6 hours of shoot. You have 1 hour for lunch, and then you shoot for another 5 or 6 hours. So that's your usual 12-hour day. And that's usually how they're paid is by an 8-hour basis. And then there's overtime for the next 4 hours, even though 12 hours is a standard shoot day. And most films, as you know, tend to go overtime. So they may end up shooting 14 or 16 hours, but they get paid overtime for all that. Here, unless you're working for a good big studio or a company, let's say like AK Films, that's very professional in the way they do things, you are not likely to have these basic, these things that are just accepted as being normal over there. So,
I see.
not to say one is better or worse than the other, it's just how differently things are done here.
I think it depends on the filmmaker, who is comfortable with what kind of environment. And I think what you're trying to say is that America is more professional overall when it comes to all the departments. Whereas in India, certain departments are professional, certain are just not professional. It's up to
I think it's hard to make a generalization like that. And I think it wouldn't be fair, especially to considering how old and formal the industries here in India, like especially in Bombay and in Chennai and Hyderabad, these three cities mainly have such old and well formalized cinema systems and film studios. So they do have all the necessary systems that they follow well. And really the film to kind of change the things for better in India was Lagan. I'm not sure if you know, but before Lagan, things were done in a much more jugaad way throughout cinema history. And you're probably aware of the history that Bollywood has with, let's say, the Indian mafia and the mob, because they were always some of the largest financiers of these movies back in the day. But films like Lagan was one of the first films to really change the concept of professionalism on a film set. The way they did it. In fact, it's a very interesting documentary that's currently on Netflix. I think it's something in the desert. I'm forgetting the name of the film, but it's about the making of Lagan. Very interesting and good for any filmmaker to watch. Similarly, there's a film called Don Quixote that's been trying to made by this filmmaker called Terry Gilliam, who was a famous British filmmaker. I'm forgetting the name. It's forgetting the name of this film, but it's also a making of the film that he never got made. But it's the ultimate lesson in what can go wrong will go wrong on a film set. And the Lagan documentary is called Madness in the Desert.
Madness in the Desert. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Madness in the
how
Desert.
about,
It's on Netflix.
you coming to India and setting up Mindist, like how did that happen? If you would like to share something about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So I'm an Indian citizen and always have been, even though I lived most of my life abroad. And even though I spent 8 years in the US and I worked there, it came to a point in late 2015, early 2016, where I had to make a decision. Either I could stay there, or rather to stay there, I had to either spend a lot of time and money to get an O1 visa, which is an artist visa. I think most people here in India would be familiar with the H1. The H1 is the most well-known one, especially in the tech industries, and it's basically a company-sponsored employee visa is what H1 is. But in the film industry, that's not very common at all. And people like us, producers, and it's a much more freelance-based industry, right? Producers, directors, art talent, whoever they are. So for that kind of work, they have a different visa, which is called an O1 or a special talent or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Now, the process for that is long and arduous and very expensive. And I consulted with a few lawyers at the time. And they told me I had an okay chance. I had good experience, but my experience was too varied. And that's because I had done the various things. Like I had directed one movie, but most of my experience was as a producer, as a line producer or as a unit production manager. I had done a lot of music videos and corporate films and branded content with a company called Replay Collective, which my friend Siddharth Ganji still runs in LA. But my other choice was to move to India because I'm an Indian citizen. Even though I didn't grow up here, I didn't really have much of an opportunity in other countries like Malaysia, where my parents were, for example. So I weighed my pros and cons, and I decided, screw it. I'm going to take the challenge. I'd like to reconnect with my roots. I want to, and to me at the time, Hollywood was the biggest film industry, and the next best thing was Bollywood, right? Or India in general.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to restart my career and make my life there. So that's what I did. I left LA in mid 2016, spent a couple months at home in KL with my folks, rejuvenated a bit, and then moved to Bombay in about October of 2016. And that was my first time living in India.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting time. It was a very challenging period because I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any contacts. Uh, I was also living as far as I was concerned, it was an entirely new culture and country. Even though I spoke Hindi, I speak Hindi, obviously my English, and I'm a Tamilian by birth. So these were languages I had. But when you are new to an Indian city, it's a little obvious to everyone else sometimes. And while I managed to get meetings with and make friends with and just get connected with people all across the industry, ranging from producers, directors, actors, whoever, all kinds of people, Sony, Phantom, you name it, I've probably met with them at some point. Things just didn't work out as I would have hoped. Right? At this point, I had already directed a feature film, so I thought, this is great experience. People will value it. They will value me for my expertise. I have gone to film school. These are all, as far as I was concerned at the time, like tokens I had collected, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, life sometimes has a way of just, slapping you in the face. So I was in India, nothing working out the way I wanted. Maybe I also wasn't approaching it the right way. Who knows? I'm willing to accept that it was not just the universe, but also myself at fault during those days. But what ended up happening was while I was meeting people, a close friend of mine who at the time was working at Hotstar, I decided to go to Pune to meet my cousin. And so I asked him, "Hey, I'm going to Pune. Is anyone there I should meet?" And so he put me in touch with a man called Aditya Goel, who is currently my partner. So we met. We ended up getting, we ended up getting along really well. And the first time we met, we hung out for about 6 to 7 hours. So clearly we got along great. And then for about 2 to 3 months, there was no communication. We wished each other like happy Diwali, happy birthday, that kind of thing. And then in about late April of 2017, I get a call from Adi, and he's like, "Yo, bro, by the way, at this point, for context, he was working in communications for Schlumberger, which is an oil and gas company."
Yeah.
So he calls me up, and he's like, "Yo, man, I'm quitting my job. I know you're not doing anything. Why don't you come over here to Pune and let's figure some stuff out?" So I said, "Okay." And I went over, and the second time I ever met him, we ended up spending 3 days together. And out of that, whatever became Mindus Media was born during that period in late April, early May of 2017. And then, of course, as they say, the rest is history. When we were in Bombay, we tried hard for about 8 months to almost a year. And then only in about June of 2018, by that point, we just about got our first couple of contracts. And imagine like starting up a company and working for almost a year and just a lot of things just not working out, meeting so many people, pitching so many projects. We'd written a bunch of screenplays. There was just the amount, I'm just thinking back to the amount of work that we did. It was really something.
No, it's
And
good. So no
so
replacement
eventually
for
we
that,
moved.
right? No
There is no
replacement
replacement for that. But at the same time, we would have been more than happy if those things just worked out instead of us constantly failing and failing and failing. But what it does do is really hardens you as a person and prepares you even better for future challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of forces you to pick up a more positive outlook and mindset on so many aspects
So
because
where is
times
it?
were quite challenging. Yeah.
Where is it set up? Is it in Pune or Bangalore?
So we are in Bangalore. We
Okay.
moved there in about 2018, right after we managed our first 2 or 3 contracts. And we moved operations there because one, Bangalore is uh, much cheaper to live in. Bombay was very expensive, and we weren't, we were using up our life savings just
Yeah. No,
living
no
there and
kidding,
trying
of
to
course.
network.
Yeah.
So we moved to Bangalore for a few reasons. One, it was cheaper to live in Bangalore. The weather is just way better.
Yeah.
Also, both of us had family there. Adi's family is from Bangalore, and I have a lot of extended family there. So this is really the main reasons we moved there. And Bangalore has been good to us. Most of our clients since then have weirdly been from everywhere except Bangalore, but
Mm-hmm.
uh, but Bangalore has been good to us, and we are still alive and well. I think thanks to this move.
No,
But I
nice,
feel
nice.
like, enough about me. I would like to actually know a bit more about you guys. Uh,
Oh,
like
cool.
maybe since you are both, you guys call it AnantaSarga, right?
Yes.
So I've spoken to Preetham about this before a little bit, but why don't you both tell me, and you guys can decide who wants to really talk about it. But what made you establish AnantaSarga?
Oh yeah. So definitely Preetham would go for this. I'll just let Preetham. I'll do the job of giving him the mic. Preetham, it's all yours.
I thought I just muted myself because I thought Varun would take
No, no.
take
Go
this.
ahead.
But so what happened was, AnantaSarga, I've already told Raghav this, but again, I'll repeat myself that AnantaSarga is just infinite creation in Sanskrit. Ananta is infinite, Sarga is creation. So since we are into creative field, we chose this name, AnantaSarga Productions. And actually, what happened was I made the short film Paradox under AnantaSarga. So, and that was made really well thanks to the entire team that worked on Paradox. Uh, a big thanks has to be said to Kalesh, who's the lead in the Paradox. He's the one who worked a lot to ensure that the product was delivered the way it was delivered. So, and once, and then, yeah, of course, he brought along high quality technicians like Ishwar, who's a established cinematographer in the industry. And then even Sterling joined along. She took the challenge of creating the music for Paradox in 4 days. I mean, she did it. And one of the saddest things was while she was working on the music, the person who taught her mentor, passed away. But in spite of that hiccup, she managed to deliver the music for Paradox within the time that was needed. So anyway, once I made Paradox, it I shared that with Varun. Varun already knew about my short films, but Paradox kind of was recognized globally, like from more than 15 countries, and Varun also really liked it. And slowly, me and Varun, we initially connected because of a similar interest for the nation. Like we both are patriotic. He's in America, I'm in India, but we have this common interest of being patriotic towards the nation. And it just started off as a very casual conversation about how to edit videos. That was the first conversation that I remember having with Varun. It
Yeah.
was very casual. It was like those settings and stuff where we shared each the desktop of each other's computers, and we were going through settings. And I never in my wildest dreams imagined that it would end up being a partnership. And it was actually Varun's idea that let's do a partnership, let's create AnantaSarga Productions, let's take this forward. So I think the rest can be narrated by Varun. I think he should take the next.
Wait, so I actually have a question based on this. So Varun, I thought somehow you guys had met in Chennai, but you've been abroad this whole time. How did you
Yeah.
guys even meet?
Yeah. So I've never been to Chennai either. Actually, we used
Damn.
to work for a different YouTube channel before, and that's where we used to work together. And then we kept on working together and talking about different projects that he already has. So the idea was to create some content which we thought is really lacking in the industry right now in India. So when we see the content today, there are different genres, and 800 movies are made in Bollywood today every year, right? So obviously there are all the genres that are done, but a lot of times you see like the majority of the ones are made to either like they're very commercial. They have no sense whatsoever. People just watch them just for whatever reasons they want. They can justify themselves watching them. So we found a niche. We thought that we need that content to be made, and we wanted to create. We definitely wanted to formalize it instead of just the people talk a lot about this should be done, this should be done. So we thought, like, why not we do it ourselves? So yeah, we have. I've never been to Chennai. We have usually been working remote, and I have never felt the distance, because when today's day and age, I don't think that really matters as much when people are collaborating from all over the place. So until we actually start shooting, for when we have to be on the stage, that's when we have to be physically in one location. Other than that, all the things that we have been doing so far, different projects, didn't feel like, oh, the distance is too much, or we should have been in the same. There's not, because we have the scripts are registered, the office is registered, everything's done, but all of that was able to be, like, Pritam's doing most of the legwork, so that's good in India, but I don't have to. But other than that, I never felt that distance. That's a good thing. I mean, as far as collaboration goes, so you're not limited to the geography. You can
Yeah,
collaborate. That
absolutely.
that goes a long way.
So this actually brings me to my next question, which is about working with someone else or collaborating on a partnership with something. I am fortunate to have a partner who, puts his blood, sweat, and tears into my company the same way I do. And so I
Exactly.
want to understand from you guys, what do you think are the benefits and perhaps some of the challenges of working with someone else? And in your case, also working remotely.
Yeah, that's the third challenge, right? So, Preetham, I'll start answering this. So I think the biggest advantage, I think, is the work is half. So if you are doing it all by yourself, it's twice the amount of work. So when you are, let's say, two partners, then you only have to do half the work. And the good thing is you can focus on the things that you're good at. So we the thing that worked for us is that the things that he's good at, I'm not. And we have I think we have agreed upon that okay, this is my area, this is his area, and we don't interfere. That has worked out. And if you have that kind of collaboration uh, where you kind of complement each other as far as the skills and the type of work that needs to be done, that helps, because then you don't either have to get yourself good at the other things that you were not if you were by yourself, right? And then you can always and as I said before, the work is half. And the challenge is, I think, the distance definitely has not been a challenge. The unfortunate situation, which is COVID right now, has been a challenge, definitely, because it has delayed a lot of our plans. So remote is, I would say, is just how you manage your time between the time difference of US and India. But other than that, the only challenge has been um, the COVID situation, which is kind of keeping us from doing a lot of things. But uh, yeah, I think, Preetham, if you have anything about the challenges that you wanted to add, or obviously the benefits.
Well, I think you covered most of it. It's either a blessing or a curse. It depends. So if you find the right person, it's a blessing. If you find the wrong person, then it's a curse. But thank God it hasn't been a curse for me. It's actually a blessing because it's actually going quite well. Because right now, Varun is really passionate, as I told you, about India and Indian history, and he's the one who kickstarted our series called Breathing History. And he's been very consistent. I mean, he's been releasing 3 to 4 episodes every month. When I say
Yeah.
he, it's
So
like a partnership between him and his wife. She shoots and he narrates, and I do the editing, and they do it sometimes. So it's going really well, and they come up with these, unique things about history, which otherwise I don't think anyone would ever come to know. Like, it's not
so
just normal history. Saying, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to ask about breathing history. Like, one is how did you guys come up with the concept? And second is how do you guys decide on the topics which you talk about? Because they are quite interesting and in some cases out of the box, right? Or out of the books. So
Yeah.
this is what I'm curious about. Please tell me about it.
Um, so how we came up with that is when we go out of your way to read the books, and there are a lot of WhatsApp messages going around that इन्होंने ये किया था, उन्होंने ये किया था, right? And there is no formal, and I'm not saying that the YouTube channel is formal, but there has to be a way that can take that information and kind of put it on the internet, that it's there for anyone to refer. And also, uh, we found out a lot of things, and we compared that to the things that we have learned in our history books. So it felt like it is so contrasting on how what we thought it is and what it actually is. So there are a lot of freedom fighters, let's say, to in the recent history, that are totally misrepresented. And then there, if you go a little further down, like in 700 CE, or maybe even before before CE, there is there are things you don't even know about. So let alone wrong information. So, like for example, we did a Karkota dynasty. Karkota dynasty was such a big dynasty, which probably not know the details about it. People might not have even heard about them, but they used their construction, their sun temple, in movies all the time, and show them as Shaitan Ka Mandir. That movie was Haidar, I think, and the temple in which he does the dance of Shaitan Ka Mandir dance, that is the sun temple, the biggest sun
Okay.
temple in the country. So look at the misrepresentation of the information, right? And what is, like, is that a tribute to that dynasty, or what it is? Like, it's in ruins right now. People just play songs, and where heroine are walking around the rocks which are around the ruins, and they're trying to show how magnanimous the ruin is. So it is just, and that is what our generation, like, Bollywood is one of the biggest information propagators in the country, right? People, if it is a movie, then it is true. So that's how we came up with that we need to have some information about it. And why not bring up those topics? We're not going to tell you everything about a specific topic, but just trying to get you familiar with at least the name, so the curiosity comes up, right? People would go out of their way to, like, okay, who's Onakyo Baba? People in Karnataka don't know Onakyo Baba. How is that? It is like few kilometers away from them. That is how strong the education has done, the damage the education has done. So we do some research, obviously, to come up with what type of things are not there that should have been there, and then we see how can we make it interesting in a 7-8 minute video, to make it kind of. But it does take a little bit of work to make it consistent in
Right.
to release a video every week. It takes a lot of work,
No,
but
I
it's
do have
totally
to
worth
say
it.
it's like nicely, these are all nicely edited and nicely put together. I don't, I'm using the word nicely too much, but well structured and organized. So I've personally enjoyed watching the few episodes that I have seen. But I guess I have a couple of questions regarding it. How, like, what is it that you focus on while you prepare each episode, and perhaps what are the kind of sources that you find, or what are these sources that you actually get this information from? Because if I was to go looking the traditional way, I would go to the textbooks or Wikipedia, right?
Mhm.
So where do you do the digging to find this information, and how do you verify that they are, that they are the truth and not, let's say, and because if they are contradictory to what we are learning, how do we verify that they are actually the truth?
It's actually very, very easy. So I'll give you an example. And Sanjeev Sanyal has talked a lot about this specific one as well. So people should be familiar with this. So, like everyone would know, Ashoka said that the narrative about Ashoka is that he was very sad about what happened in Kalinga, right? That so many people died. So he was very sad about it. And that is the inscription of Ashoka, that he inscribed that he is sad about it. So that is all they tell you, that he is sad. But if you look at the whole inscription, if you go on reading, he goes on to say that yes, I'm sad, but if any other king does this to me, they will face the same consequence. So I will not stop here. So all you have to do is just look at the whole inscription instead of the snippet that has been shown to you. So it is, what do you call that, selective representation of information that kind of fits your idea. So I am only going to show you the part of the fact that fits my story. So all I'm trying to do is, hey, don't look at just this, look at the whole thing, right? And it's easy. You go to the sources that are being cited today, and then read the whole thing, and then you'll see the story is completely different. So the trick you can use, and a lot of people can use, is you go, let's say you're trying to make a video on Rani Lakshmi, for example, or trying to find information on Rani Lakshmi. You go to her Wikipedia page, and then if you go to the sources of the Wikipedia page, you will find more sources there. There are some very obvious sources that are wrong, just don't use them,
Right.
like wire and print and all that are really. But there are a lot of sources that are archives, which are from the people who had no kind of vested interest in writing it one way or the another. Right? There are travelers who just write what they see. They have no interest in making it look a certain way. So you can refer to those. And right now, most of the things, and I for sure don't go to a library to read physical books. So everything is available online, right? So
Okay.
it's very, very easy. But editing part, I think Preetham can talk more about it and how editing matters in that, and the type of information that we have to propagate. Preetham, you're still mute.
Yep.
What do you want to
So
add to this?
editing, yep. Well, you just go by the content. You first listen to what Varun has to say, and then once you listen to it, you just pick the right music, the right images, the right words, the keywords that should, it's like he can say 2 or 3 sentences, but there could be one keyword which he's trying to convey, like when he said about the temple or some other topic. So you need to ensure that those keywords come on the screen, they come in certain timings. So it's all about putting together it in such a way that it's the most impactful when someone watches it. It's like it has to grab their attention. So that's how I sit and edit. And yeah, and
So
you just pick a good background music. And yeah, Varun, sorry.
Preetham, I want to go back to the paradox topic. Um, what is the score right now for that? The recognitions that you've gotten so
I'm sorry.
far?
Like,
The
Like the
score
number
of
of
like,
oh,
awards.
no, it's like,
the
yeah,
paradox. Yeah, it's like 45 official. I mean, so far, thanks to the effort put in by everyone who worked on it, every single person, uh, because everyone did their best work, and only I know how much they did. They worked out of passion. So,
yeah.
and thanks to that, yeah, it's like it's been officially selected in 45 film festivals globally, in more than 15 countries, where
Congrats.
it's
Yeah.
won close to 25 awards. Yeah, in various categories like editing, directing, music, sound, and even producing. So thank God. And it's won at where you studied as well, LA. There's a film festival in LA where it's won an award as well. So it's gone
Oh,
all around the globe. I think it's because the film has no dialogues, it was able to connect to so many people.
Mute.
yeah,
Pushpak.
That's
that's actually one thing I wanted to mention about short filmmaking, and that's something I think you guys did right with Paradox, is that you kept the idea simple, and you kept the incident a simple one. And because of that, you were able to make a lot of impact in a very small amount of time. And that's often a mistake that a lot of short filmmakers make, is they try to put too much information in too little time. And so they're not able to do justice to the idea that they want to propagate. So that way, I think really that's the main strength of Paradox as a film.
I have the two directors here, which I want to ask you from a director's standpoint, and also now that both of you are entrepreneurs and producers as well, and you went to school for being a producer, obviously. So, uh, how much of, in your experience, like when after winning so many awards, and Raghav, you being in like obviously done a movie, done so many other short films and ad films, and actually went to school for this, with how much of these credentials help you get your foot in the door, and also how much uh, does the networking help? So let's say if I have done none of those, right? Let's say I am someone, an outsider, not, and I have no awards, no, I didn't go to school or anything, but I know that one right person, right, who can get me the funding for the movie and get me the right people, get me in front of the right people. So do you think that going through the formal way of contacting, emailing the agencies, the managers, and would that be the better way, or instead you can skip that and actually focus more on networking, personal networking, instead of going through their managers?
So I don't see one as a replacement for the other. I think they are both necessary. Uh, if you have a personal relationship with those managers and agents, it just makes it that much easier when you reach out to them formally. And often, even when you know someone, let's say I know Monica personally, and if I want to approach her for a project I do next, I might ask her, and she might just say yes straight up, but I would still have to formally go through her manager or her agent in order to set up
I
particular
see.
schedules and all these things, because those are the people responsible for those aspects of those people's lives. And that system has been set up to make the lives of those artists better. So I
Makes
wouldn't
sense.
say one is a replacement for the other. But at the end of the day, some of the toughest things are getting funding. So if
Yep.
you already are connected with the person with the money and they want to put money in you, there is there is really no replacement for that, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
why did
no,
I
no
get the
doubt.
opportunity to direct my first film? Because for some reason somebody believed in the person who I made that film with. Uh, which that's such a one in a million type of opportunity. It's not something
No,
most people
definitely.
get. uh, and
So
yes,
Preetam,
I think the experience is what gets you into more doors, but
yeah,
luck
yeah.
is what sometimes helps the whole thing go
I think a
through.
lot of people would debate that, like, a lot of people, they say luck is nothing, just uh, all what you do. But some people say destiny it is what it is. It is already decided. So that's a different topic of discussion for sure.
That's days, like weeks and months worth long topic, that one.
So Preetam, after have you felt the benefit? Like, and I kind of asking you this question more for we to say it and people to hear it, and I know the answer to that, but I want you to kind of spell it out for everyone so they can hear it and learn from it. So all these awards and so many, such a high count, and already done all this, how much has that helped you in getting your foot in the door and in front of the right person?
Well, before I answer that, one thing when it comes to filmmaking, which I'm sure even Raka will agree, is that you know it can look something else on the paper, but when it's done is when people actually get to see what the product is. So that's one of the key points. Like, so all these recognitions, all that they can do is they can get you a contact, they can get you a day or perhaps an hour with the right person. But then that person, it's very difficult, for that person. It's like what Raghav said, you have to be in the right place at the right time. It has to be luck. Otherwise, if that person doesn't share a similar vision, because it all exists in someone's head, in the end, where is the film? It doesn't exist until it's made.
Right.
And yes, because something that can sound absolutely absurd on paper can be something wonderful to look at on screen. Someone might just
Yes.
brush it off saying it's not such a good idea, but when it's done, and there are numerous examples for that as well, numerous projects that have been scraped off, thinking that they would be nothing, but those projects are the ones that have actually revived the studios that would have otherwise gone bankrupt. The best
So
example for
that's
that is Terminator.
yes, yes. I mean that is, but I think that's the chicken and the egg though. And I'm just being
Yeah.
the devil's advocate here,
Yes,
because
yes.
it's if you let's say I am the guy with all the money, right? And if you come to me and they say you need the money to build the product that you think is going to turn out to be awesome, but you have to make me realize that, right? I think that's the key. That you got would you
That's
be
exactly what I said. It's like, see, even the other example that I can give, that I know about, that I can give is, there are plenty of there's one Tamil film as well. It was directed by Bala, where Vikram was the hero. I think Raghav will be very familiar with that, where Vikram plays a psycho. That film, even after it was made, it ran for 100 days in the preview theater. Preview theater is where you preview the film so that distributors can come and see, and they can
oh
decide,
really?
like, a distributor will choose which, I mean, they will bid, and the highest bidder
Hmm.
will go. But even after running for 100 days in the preview theater, no one liked it. They said this film is not going to be successful. But then finally, when it was released, it became a massive success. The same thing goes for Christopher Nolan's Memento. Like, lot of, even after it was made, not on paper, the film was made, it was out there for everyone to see, but none of the distributors wanted it because they said that the audience are not going to like this. It's too much, it's too much. It has too much intellectual stuff. There's too much for people are not going to think so much while watching a film. They're not going to like the product. Everyone rejected it, but then the person who funded it, they themselves distributed it, and then it became a hit. So forget about convincing someone on paper. You can make the film and still people might not like it.
Right,
So
right. That's
that's
true.
the
That's
challenge.
true.
That's really a challenge. It's it's something that
But you,
only people
but
who
net
go through
you
that will
need
understand.
we need to like as you said, Raghav, networking obviously is the key. And if you go to a school, it makes it easy, but you still outsiders still have to do the network. So for people who are watching this and who are who want to like get into this and maybe looking for funding, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are looking to fund their first project, right? And they want to meet the right people. What can you, depending on wherever they are, US or India, how what are the tangible places or like online, or what are the things they can do to actually start networking? Are there meetup groups? Are there websites that they can register? What are the very tangible things that are out there that can be helpful for networking to with the right people, obviously?
So of course there are forums and websites out there. One can connect with other people. But aside from that, the first most important thing is doing the research. Like you have to know what you want, and if you know what you want, then you can find a way to get there. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say if I want to find a way to speak to person X at Studio Y, I then
Yeah.
have to think, okay, this is where I want to get. Now, how do I get there? Then you can see, okay, this is a person who knows this person that knows that person. So eventually you get yourself connected from person to person to person until you get there. Now, that of course is
Okay.
the most traditional way of networking, but that's
Yeah.
also still till date might be the most effective way because a
Mm-hmm.
personal reference still beats a cold call most of the times. But there's, I have to reiterate this, and I mentioned this earlier, one can never underestimate the power of a cold call.
Yes.
Then yes, the number of people I have met or had a conversation with or managed to meet other people through because of simple cold call or just reaching out to them on LinkedIn or and this is something my dad would always talk about, the power of LinkedIn. And it's not just my dad, my partner and I, the number of people we have, the number of projects we have managed to get simply because we reached out to someone either on LinkedIn or simply through email, because most people, there is a way to get connected with them. If you find out who they are, their contact information is almost it's almost too easy to find. Because it's
Okay.
just a message away on LinkedIn, or sometimes it's just publicly available either on their websites, on the company
Right.
site. So, and another major thing is a lot of people, and as you can see here, we are an example, love to talk about the things they know about. So if you reach out to someone, and generally if it's from a more of a, oh, I would like to learn about something, or I just want to ask you about something, more than it is about I want something from you, they are very likely to respond in a positive way. And by that I
Yeah.
mean they're most likely to say, yes, why not? I have an hour, 10 days from now, why don't you come to the office? We'll have a chat. These kinds of things are possible, and they've happened. I mean, they happen to me much more often than I give it credit for. So, and
So
so I like to
Rasan,
do the same. Yeah.
Rasan, and actually, 2 points on this. I want to, in our description in the video, we want to put out some sources where people can go and network. So, like award functions, or there must be some networking event that are scheduled somewhere, uh, depending on the geography, that people can go and network with. But
Right.
I see
Festivals.
Rasan, yeah, festivals, right? Rasan wrote a really good point on this. He said there are a lot of studios and producers looking for movies and content. How do you position yourself so that your name comes to mind first when they are looking for someone to make a movie with? So I think that's a really good point. Like, you need to be out there so people your people think about you when they are thinking about the project.
I think what you guys may not realize is this Rashan is, and I'm pretty sure because I'm not looking at the live stream, so I don't know. But
Okay.
this is
He's the one
Rashan,
who
who I made my
acted in,
movie with.
yeah.
Right. Right.
He
Yeah.
is,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
also directed the film Bengali Beauty, which went on to become, I think, Bangladesh's most popular film of 2019, I believe.
Right. Right.
I may be slightly off about the year, but I
Okay.
also did music supervision for that, as I'll probably
Nice.
just pat myself on the back. But amazing film, and you guys, if you get a chance, should definitely check it out. Uh,
Sure. Sure. Definitely.
yeah,
So
but
I think he has a good point that we no point, I think, in today's day and age of social media, there's no point working in the back end or in the background. We need to be out there and put our name everywhere as much as possible on all the platforms,
yeah,
so that it's kind of, that's how the marketing works, right? They just say it so many times that साबुन का नाम आता है तो हमाम याद आना चाहिए सबसे पहले. but but no, I think that's a good tactic. I think I want to close this off with one last question to both of you, and I think that would be that would be it, because I think we are at an hour, more than an hour now. But I think Raghav, if you can tell me the exciting project that you're working on moving forward, and what are your plans for the coming year and the year after, like the recent plans that you're working on right now that you're
so there are
excited
a
about.
couple of things. Yeah, there's a few things I'm excited about. I'll begin with the more obvious ones. In the next month, I'm going to be directing a couple of music videos with a new upcoming music artist called Steven Netto. I think
Yeah.
you guys will like his music when it does release. The
Nice.
second is Rashan and myself and my partner Adi have been for a long time working on a film called Coco and Nut. And that's something we've been planning to make for. In fact, we were supposed to begin shooting right before the pandemic began. And of course, that has delayed our project
What,
indefinitely
pandemic delayed your stuff? How is that possible?
But besides that, outside of filmmaking, my partner and I, we've also gotten into the blockchain now with a new project called Mahar. And so I won't divulge any more details about that because there's some interesting developments on the way there. And I look forward
Yeah,
to
don't
all
want
of
to jinx
you.
it.
I look forward to all of you checking that out when the time comes. So,
Definitely,
long
definitely.
story short, that's what I'm working on.
Nice, nice. Preetham, how's your work going, and how soon are you thinking we can make our next movie, or the first movie? And I think a lot of things with which we got in the information that we got from Raghav was really, really helpful. So that should help us strategize more. But I think we with the COVID kind of behind us, kind of still here, depend on what waves is going on. But it should be close, right?
It should be, yes, because we have almost everything in place except the money. Except that, we almost have everything.
We have the money, we just don't have enough.
Yeah, that's the other way of saying
it. Is it ever enough is the question.
Yes, that is true. The movie can get as much expensive as it can. Very depend.
Yeah.
But
so we have
no,
the
it was
same
really
team that worked on Paradox, who's excited about the project that we have in hand, because it's a completed script, a bound script that is registered with the South India Film Writers Association. So yeah, Kalesh is in on it, Ishwar is in on it, and Sterling. Yep. So we do have the team, and I believe it's a matter of time before everything else falls into place and we go ahead with it. And I think Raghav forgot to mention about the animated series that he's working on.
Right, I was trying to
When
keep
is
that
that
bit under wraps, but we've been
never
working on
mind.
a series called Iconopolis, and we haven't set a release date for it yet. But there are some interesting developments going on. We are currently writing it. We had put out a proof of concept of it about a year ago or a year and a half ago, and we ended up raising some funds for it in the last 6 months. And so that's also something ongoing. Yes, these are all a bunch of crazy things all happening at the same time, but that's just how the entrepreneurial life is sometimes.
And one
Yeah,
of the
no,
things I
that's good.
remember about Iconopolis is it's going to be an Indian South Park, I believe.
Well,
Nice.
ideally, no one watching it
Indian
will
version.
peg it as Indian, but rather, uh, you know, if people do think, "Oh, wow, this has come from India," ooh, like that would be great. But
Yeah.
but we aren't trying to peg ourselves in any way that way. But yes, if we are ever compared with the likes of legendary things like
Straight
South
on.
Park or any of those guys, sure, that would be something touching wood. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Cool. So I think this was a good conversation, and we should be able to do more of this. Maybe next time we talk more in detail about a specific thing instead of a very high level stuff. But this was a good conversation, and I hope a lot of people got a lot of out of this. If people who are watching and people who will watch it, if you have any questions, specific questions or a comment or feedback, please leave it in the comments. We will for sure be able to get back to you. We will have all the information, contact information of Raghav and Preetham and me, everyone in the description as well. But thank you, both of you guys, for your time. I really appreciate it. And I know, Raghav, you're traveling, so hopefully whenever you settle down, go back to your home. We do this again. Cool. Have a good one,
Thank you,
guys.
guys. Thanks for having
Thank
me,
you.
guys.
Namaskar. Namaste.
Yeah, thanks Raghav. Yep. Thank you, Arun.